How far would you go to feel alive again? What if one reckless choice could shatter everything you've built? On paper, I had it all. A career I'd built from the ground up, a family that depended on me, a husband who was always there. Ethan, the man who promised me the world. But somewhere between the deadlines and the dinner plates, something shifted. I became invisible, even to myself. My days were a blur of tasks, expectations, and a smile that barely reached my eyes. It wasn't that Ethan didn't love me, he did. But the man I married was no longer the man I lived with. He was consumed by his own battles, leaving me adrift in a sea of silence. Then there was Lena, my best friend. She could always see what I couldn't. You need to feel alive again, she'd say, always pushing me to break free, to remember the woman I used to be before all the responsibilities. I would laugh it off, but deep down, I knew she was right. That's when Leo walked in. He wasn't supposed to matter, but his smile, the way his eyes locked with mine, it was electric. It was everything I'd been missing. In that instant, I realized something I hadn't let myself admit. I wanted more. And Leo? He made me feel seen again. But what happens when a single moment changes everything? What happens when you let someone in who can make you forget the life you're supposed to love? It wasn't supposed to go this far. Every part of me tried to stop, to hold back, but when Leo touched me, it was like nothing else mattered. The more we talked, the deeper the connection grew. His attention. It was like a drug, something I'd been starving for without even realizing. The nights spent with him felt like an escape from the monotony, an escape from the role I'd become so accustomed to. I began to crave it, to long for it. And then one evening, after another night of electric conversations and laughter, he kissed me. At first, it was slow, almost hesitant, like he was waiting for permission. But the second his lips met mine, I felt everything. Every fear, every desire, every rush of emotion, flood my body. I kissed him back, and it was like the world outside disappeared. My mind screamed at me to stop, to think about Ethan, about everything I was throwing away. But in that moment, I couldn't hear anything except my own heart pounding and the feeling of Leo's arms around me. It wasn't just a kiss. It was a declaration of who I was now and who I wanted to be. But as his lips left mine, reality crashed back in, and the guilt hit me harder than ever. I wanted to pull away, but the feeling of being wanted, desired, it was too strong. I had crossed a line, and I didn't know how to come back from it. It was late, just past midnight, when I heard the door creak open. Ethan stood in the hallway, his silhouette barely visible in the dim light. I could tell something was wrong before he even spoke. His eyes, those warm eyes I once knew so well, were filled with doubt, with suspicion. I could feel the weight of it all pressing on me, the guilt crawling under my skin, making it harder to breathe. "Maya," he said, his voice low, but it carried the heaviness of everything unspoken. "What's going on with you? You've been so distant lately." "I'm worried," his words hung in the air, and for a moment, I thought I might crumble under the pressure of them. I opened my mouth to lie, to tell him everything was fine, but the words felt like lead in my throat. I could see the confusion in his face, the pain. And for the first time in weeks, I felt the gravity of my choices hit me like a brick wall. I couldn't tell him the truth. I couldn't admit that I had betrayed everything we'd built. So, I did what I'd done so many times before. I lied. "I'm just tired," I said. "Work, you know? Nothing's changed." The lie was so easy, so convincing. And yet, I felt my heart twist in my chest. Ethan didn't push it further. He just nodded and turned to walk away. But I could feel him pulling further and further away from me, emotionally, with each lie I told. I knew I was losing him, but I didn't know how to stop. Not when Leo's face was still burned into my mind, when his touch still lingered on my skin, when the desire for more was consuming me. The days blurred together, each one more suffocating than the last. The weight of my secret was unbearable, but I couldn't seem to let go of Leo. Every stolen text, every secret phone call felt like a dangerous thrill that I didn't want to lose. Yet, with every moment I spent with him, the distance between Ethan and me grew wider. I couldn't look him in the eye anymore without seeing the truth in his face, the one I was hiding from. I tried to make it work, tried to be the wife, the mother, the woman I was before Leo ever entered the picture. But the more I tried to pretend, the more suffocating it became. I wanted Leo, his attention, his passion. I wanted to feel alive again, to not just exist. But the guilt was eating me alive. Ethan deserved better than this. But could I really give up what I had with Leo? Could I walk away from the fire he ignited in me? I didn't know how much longer I could live this double life. Every day I felt like I was being torn apart, stretched thin between two worlds, one I had created with Ethan, and one that was built on a lie with Leo. And in the middle of it all, I realized something. The only person I was really betraying was myself. I had been pretending to be someone I wasn't, for so long that I forgot who I truly was. So, I made a choice. I would tell Ethan the truth. It wasn't going to be easy. But it was the only way I could stop living in fear of being caught. I had to face the consequences of my actions, no matter how much it hurt. Asterisk. When I finally confessed to Ethan, I saw it in his eyes. Hurt, disbelief, anger. The love I thought was unbreakable seemed to shatter in an instant. I could feel the walls closing in as he processed what I'd done, what I had become. He didn't yell, didn't argue. He just stood there, silent, for what felt like an eternity. And when he finally spoke, his words were quiet but sharp. How could you do this to me? To us? In that moment, I realized that everything I had been afraid of had come true. The life we built, the trust we shared, it was all in ruins. Ethan walked out of the room, and I didn't stop him. I couldn't. I had lost him, and deep down, I knew I couldn't blame him. I had done this to us. I had thrown it all away. The affair, the lies. It was all for nothing. The passion, the excitement, the connection with Leo, it all seemed meaningless now. The price of my choices was something I could never undo. I had destroyed the one thing that had mattered most to me, and for what? A fleeting moment of feeling alive? I had sacrificed my marriage, my family, and my own sense of self. And in the end, I was left with nothing but regret. The days after Ethan left were quiet, too quiet. I kept expecting him to walk through the door, to pull me into his arms like he always had, but he didn't. Instead, there was an emptiness in the house that felt like it would swallow me whole. I went through the motions of life, but it was like I was living in a fog. The house felt like a stranger's home, and my own reflection was barely recognizable. I had shattered everything. My marriage, my family, my self-respect, all because I had wanted something more. I kept telling myself that it was just a mistake, a temporary lapse, that the excitement I'd felt with Leo was real. But in the quiet moments, when I was alone with my thoughts, I realized the truth. It wasn't just the affair. It wasn't just the lies. It was the person I had become in the process. I had chased something outside of my marriage, something I thought would make me feel whole. But now, I felt more broken than ever. I had convinced myself that what I was missing could be filled by someone else, that Leo could give me the validation I craved. But what I had failed to see was that the emptiness I felt wasn't something Leo could fill. It was a void within me, something I had to face on my own. And no matter how much I wanted to go back, to rewind time, I knew I couldn't. Ethan wasn't coming back. And Leo, he had disappeared just as quickly as he'd entered my life. He wasn't the answer either. What was left now was the aftermath. The wreckage. The pieces I had to pick up. But I didn't know where to start. Could I ever be the woman I was before? Could I ever fix what I had broken? Asterisk. I started seeing a therapist a few months later. I needed someone to help me understand why I had done what I did. It wasn't just about Ethan or Leo, or even the affair. It was about me. I had spent so long trying to be everything for everyone, wife, mother, career woman, and in doing so, I had lost sight of who I was. I was empty, seeking validation in all the wrong places. The hardest part was facing that truth. But little by little, I started to rebuild. Not my marriage, because I knew that door was closed. But I started to rebuild myself. I started to learn how to be okay with just me, to find fulfillment without needing anyone to validate me. It wasn't easy. There were days when I wanted to crawl back into the comfort of the old routine, when I missed the life I once had. But then I'd remember how it all fell apart, how fleeting that comfort had been. I wanted more than that now. I didn't want to live in the shadows of regret anymore. I wanted to own my choices, to live with the consequences, and to learn from them. Could I ever be whole again? I didn't have the answer yet. But I knew one thing for sure: I would never stop trying. Asterisk. I spent so much time searching for something outside of myself, only to realize that everything I needed was inside me all along. But that's the hardest lesson to learn. The real work is always on the inside. And the cost of not seeing that? It's steep. I'm still learning, still growing, but for the first time in a long time, I'm not afraid to face the truth. I won't pretend anymore. This is me, and I'm choosing to live for me now. If you've ever felt like you've lost yourself in the chaos of life, know that it's never too late to come back. You don't have to destroy everything to find who you are. So, if you found something in my story that resonates with you, share it. Let's start the conversation. And if you're ready to make a change, don't forget to like, subscribe, and join me on this journey of self-discovery. It's time we stop hiding from the truth and start living it. Asterisk.